Thank you. OK, so the only thing that I'm going to say about what is GraphQL, because I think most of it can actually be better explained by watching me code, and there will be a ton of exercises on a Saturday morning. Yeah. So GraphQL is a query language for APIs. That's it. So GraphQL is only a spec. The rest of the things were tools built around that idea. The actual GraphQL thing is just a spec that allows people to query databases or REST APIs or local state using type definitions and stuff. That's it. That's literally it. So unlike REST, one of the better things is that you can request exactly what you want and get only that. So there's no more like underfetching or overfetching. You don't need to, for example, the GitHub API is one huge example of that, which has like, you have one JSON that connects to 30 other JSONs, which is not cool. So if you go to the GitHub API, which is in GraphQL now, the new one, you see that you can request the things that you want, and that's just it. You don't need to do any other requests. Some good things is that it's typed. So if you say that something is a string and somebody screws up and sends you a number, it will break. You need to know which things are. Also, there is no thing such as an array. You have to specify what type of array it is. So it has to be an array of something. You can't just say it's an array. And you also can't just say it's an object. So an object needs to have all of these things defined. So yeah. It also has incredible tooling. That's what I'm going to go over today. We're going to use the new Apollo server on the backend that they released, I think, about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago. And on the front end, we're going to use React and React Apollo. Yeah, that's it. So if you check out the thing, there is also these links. So how to GraphQL fundamentals and the comparison they have to REST. It's mostly what I said, but if you want to check these two out, they're really nice videos. They're made by the GraphQL team. It's now the Prisma team. They made a lot of good stuff about GraphQL. OK, so the first thing that we're going to do is literally just create a dummy server. So you have a folder called server start. The thing is, you don't need to follow what I'm doing right now, because there will be an exercise that will be basically what I'm doing right now, but with a slightly different. So you don't actually have to type what I'm doing right now, which will be kind of annoying if you try to do that, because I type. Also, if I'm speaking way too fast, please let me know. Just raise your hand or something. That's not incredibly awkward for you. Anything is fine. Yes?
One question. You use slides. Where we can find that?
I use what?
Slides presentation.
Oh, the presentation is also on the GitHub. It's zero presentation. It's on Spectacle. So when you download, you can just run yarn dev on it.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the main reason I created it in Spectacle, because anyone on Windows or Linux or Mac can run it. If you don't know what Spectacle is, it's like this super niche thing for presentations in which you have to be a developer, a React developer who does conferences and likes to do slides in code. So this super fucking niche thing. OK, so who knows what GraphQL is? Shit. OK, wait. So I kind of screwed up here with the mic. Wait, I got this, I think. I don't? What happened here? Oh, it got stuck on the thing. OK, cool. So the first thing that I did was that I imported Apollo server and GraphQL from the actual Apollo server. So the Apollo server is the package that you need to instantiate to actually get a GraphQL server. And GraphQL is the GraphQL query language. So there are two ways that you can import GraphQL files. One of them is, so for example, in the front end, you can use a Webpack loader, or you can just do something like GraphQL and then this, and this will be read as a GraphQL thing, which is way easier than to actually try it, because Node doesn't recognize GraphQL files as files. You would have to import it and then transform it to UTF-8, and it's a mess. So there's been this GraphQL thing that was, I think, created by Apollo, I'm not sure, which just allows you to create GraphQL definitions just like this, which makes it way easier. OK, so I imported these two things. And what we're going to do here, every single thing has a README, is we're just going to create a demo server with just an array. So we just have an array that's going to be of movies or something, and we're just going to query that array. That's it. OK, so I'm going to create a simple array, maybe not called array. Oh my God, my computer is super hot right now. OK, const movies. And I'm going to create an array of like 2 movies. OK, so title. And ID, It's going to be 1. Maybe ID should be first. So ID is going to be 1. This is the title, and I'm just going to put a dummy year. I think it was like 2010 or something. OK, cool. So we have this movie, and I'm just going to create another one. So ID 2. And this is 1990. And it's because it's the year before I was born. OK, so we have this. What is actually here doesn't matter. The idea is that we're going to query these things as a GraphQL server. OK, so to start this Apollo server, you need to actually instantiate a new version, a new Apollo server. So the way you do this is that you assign it to a variable. So const server equals new Apollo server. And in here, you need to pass 2 things. There are a bunch of other stuff that you can pass, like options for the port and options for what is the endpoint, every single thing that you can imagine. But what we're going to pass, the only 2 things that we need to pass is the type definitions that we'll create. So the type definitions are, for example, in this const movies, everything has an ID, a title, and a year. So the ID will always be an ID. So the GraphQL recognizes an ID. The only difference between ID, you defining ID or it defining number or string, is that it verifies that it's a unique thing. That's pretty much the only difference. There's also type string. There's type integer. There's type float. Floats can be integers, but integers cannot be floats. Don't know. And you can also define arrays, but arrays need to know what's inside. And an object is a new type, basically. So you have a type of movie that has these 3 things, for example. That is what a type definition is. So I'm going to create type defs. And so we need to create this. And we also need to create the resolvers. And these are the only 2 things that we need to pass to the Apollo server. And after that, we can actually server.listen. And then we get the server. And we can just console.log the URL of the server. So console.log server.url, so that we know where it's running. And this is all that. This is the only boilerplate, the only actual boilerplate from Apollo server is this. The rest of the things are things that you need to do in order to get GraphQL to work. So let's start with what are type definitions and how do you define them. So I'm going to create a const called type defs. And like I said, this is called with GQL, which is the GraphQL query language. You can also create a new file, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. And in here, we need to define what our queries will be. In this case, we'll have 1 query. The only query that we'll have is to get all the movies, for example. So we need to have a type of query. Query and mutation are always in uppercase. And this type of query will return, this type of query will have things inside of it. It will not return anything. But when we get the movies, what do we want to return? We want to return an array of a movie, which is this. So we need to define a type movie. So this is what I mean by every object needs to be a type and needs to have all of its properties properly defined. They can be nullable, though. Wait, let me just come here and explain. So type movie, maybe not like this, and I should do this. So type movie. So what I mean by they can be nullable is that I have an ID, which you say that this ID is like this, and this means that it's mandatory. So if this one is null, the whole application will break. But I can go with title. If I say title is a string, but don't put this, it can actually return as null. Another thing, you can put commas here or not put commas. Both ways work. If you're used to putting commas in objects, that's completely fine, and it still works. If you're not, that's fine as well. You can also put one and not put the rest of them, and it still works. I don't know what's the magic, but it's a thing. And then we have the year, which is a number. The way that it's defined, a number here is integer. If this was a price or something, define float. And what does the movies thing return? So it returns an array, which is defined like this. So the same way you define arrays. Oh. Yeah, it's not at all. So we have a query for movies that will return an array of a movie, basically. So an array that will contain objects that are equal to this movie. If you want to just return an array of strings, for example, you can just like do this. If it stops working, let me know. Cool, thanks. OK, so then, did it stop working? No, oh, OK.
You change to black layout, I think
Oh yeah, please. God, yes. Ugh. Oh no, I know. Yeah. Ugh. Is this or this better? Okay, cool. I'm sorry, no, I don't use white themes either. I know it hurts your eyes. It's fine. It hurts mine too. Okay, so we have a query which does absolutely nothing. Cool. So the next thing that we need to do is define the resolvers. What the resolvers are is basically, so when you ask for the movies, you need to have a way of that showing you something. So the resolvers get what you asked for, and okay, so I'm going to create a const resolvers. That's probably easier. And this will be an object that will have several properties. So these properties will match these types. So for example, I'll have a query property, which will be for all the queries that I'm creating. And this query property, inside of it, will have a movies property. And this is what I resolve. Yeah.
Query is reserved word, or what does why query?
It's called query because the type query. Oh yeah, query is a reserved word. Yeah, yeah. So query is a reserved word in GraphQL for things that you want to get, basically, and things that you want to put are mutations. These two are completely reserved words by GraphQL. Like you can't name your query. Yeah. So movies is a function that needs to return something, and in this case, all we want to return is the const that we defined at the top. So we do this. And so let me come here and server start, and I'm not sure if it's yarn. Is it yarn dev? Yay, nice. App crashed. Integer, because it's not integer, it's int. Or is it number? No, it's int, it's int. Okay, so if you go to localhost 4000, GraphQL Playground is not the. Okay, nice. Do I need to yarn install something? No. What the hell? GraphQL Playground is not defined. What the fuck has happened here? Okay, sorry about that. I have no idea what happened here. Oh, there appears to be trouble with your network connection. Okay, there's no internet. That's it. There is no internet. Wait, I'm going to connect it to my phone. Oh, no, it's fine. I'll connect it to my phone. I think it's more safe if I connect it to the phone.
Yeah, the 3G is quite fine, but you can connect to this one.
Oh, no, I think it's actually my computer. Turn Wi-Fi on. What the fuck, computer? What are you doing with your life, man? You're on dev. Jesus Christ. Okay, there we go. Oh my god, this is in white as well. Okay, so how do you actually query things in here? So let me just clean all of this. I can't clean it. Got to create a new tab. Okay, so this is the graph. Oh, come on. Oh my god, this is why I don't buy Apple stuff. Okay, there we go. Nice. This is the GraphQL Playground, which by default comes with a black theme. Don't worry about it. But this is the white theme because it's slightly better for readability. So in here is where you can actually test your queries and stuff like that. So how do you ask for something in here? So first thing is the keyword. So if it's either a query or a mutation. So if I type query, and then you can give it a name or not. I'm going to call it get movies. Then open curly brackets, and in here you define the queries. Yeah, sure, sorry. So in here you define what you actually want to get, which needs to match this right here. So we only have one query, which is movies. And I'm going to come here and say movies. But if I try to do this, it will give me an error. And this is because movies, you can't just return it like this, because it has a selection of fields inside of it, like ID, name, and year. So you need to actually return something from it. So if I just return the ID, I can get the IDs of the movies, and I can also get everything by typing title and year. You also can or not put this. It's fine. And this will return me all of the movies. Also, you can also not put a name, and this will also work. And by default, it's a query. So if you really don't want to do a lot of things, you can just call it like this, and this will also work. So this is the name of the query that you want to pass, and these are the fields of that object that you want to receive. Does that make sense? That guy's falling asleep. I can see it from over here. OK, so next thing is that it's cool to just return an array, but it's actually not very useful. So yeah.
If I want to return all the keys and they are like more than 100, what do I have?
That's not a thing. You have to define everything that you want to return. Yeah. You have to define each key. Yeah. Which may or may not be a problem. OK, so that is actually slightly cool. But the thing that I also want to show is how you can return only one movie. So make a resolver that only returns one thing. OK, so I'm going to create a query called movie. And this one will not return an array of movies, but will actually return just a movie. So same thing here. I need to define a query, a resolver for movie. And in here, let's go over the three things. OK, so like this, and I need a comma here. So the query thing and the mutation, the function in the resolvers gets three parameters. The first one is the parent. And what the parent is for example, in MongoDB, you have the ID actually comes from the database as _ID, for example. And one thing that you can do is override it in the type movie, for example. If this comes from MongoDB, you can just create a type movie here, so query, and then you have like movie, and then you can just resolve the ID of that movie. If I put a comma here, and in here, this parent will be everything that's resolved in the actual movie. So what you can do is set ID equals to something, but this is the parent query, basically, or the parent mutation, which in this case, it doesn't matter. No one actually, I don't think I've ever seen anyone use this. I don't know why it's the first argument. So usually, every time you see a resolver, it starts like this, because no one uses the first argument, basically. I've never seen anyone use it. But it's a good thing to know what it actually is if by any chance you may need it in the future. But it's mostly, you will see it like 90% of the times as an underscore. Why it's the first argument? I don't know. So then we get all the params that the person has sent. And in this case, we don't have any params, so we need to define one. So in here, the user will pass an ID that will be of type ID. And this field is mandatory. So this is how you define that a field is mandatory. So in the parameters, we'll just have an object that will have a key of ID. So what the movie query means is that every time you ask for movie, you need to pass an ID, and this will return an instance of a movie. That's it. And the third one is the context, which we will go over, but right now it's not really necessary. So what do we actually need to do here? So first thing is you need to get the ID. So const ID equals params.id. This is what the user has sent. I can console.log this ID so you can see. So I can just console.log params, for example. And let me open this and get, so movie ID equals 1. And I get null because I don't resolve it to anything, but this is the object that I actually get. So this is the parameters that the user has sent. If I send something else, like title, and pass in something, this will actually give me an error because I'm not supposed to pass any more parameters to this. So what you get in the params here as the second, what you get in the second argument is exactly what the user has passed. After that, you need to return the actual movie that matches that the user has passed. So we can just return and do movies that find. So that oh, there we go. No, that's not a very good explanation. So it was used filter in arrays. Okay, so find is pretty much like filter, but instead of retrieving every single one of the elements, it just retrieves the first one. So it retrieves, so if I go and I say movie, and I want to get the movie, which the ID is double equals is because it's a weird thing, I'll explain, is equal to this ID. So if you do a filter, this will return an array of one element, basically. If you do a find, this will just return the first. It will basically do filter 0. That's the only thing. You can also do filter, that works perfectly fine. These double equals is because when you do an ID as a type of number, it will sometimes turn it into a string. And so just do double equals. And you will return this. So if I do this now, it says failed to fetch because the server cannot be reached. What? No, it can. It's right here. Did the internet go down again? No. OK, yeah. Sometimes you do need to reload the page, but it mostly works. So movie ID of 1 will return the movie that has an ID equal to 1. If I say 2, it will return the second movie. And if I say 3, it will return me a movie of null. OK. So you can also do something like const. Yeah. OK. So wait. Const movie is equal to this. OK. So if movie you return it. If not, you just throw a new error that says, if not, throw new. It's not like this.
I think better way it says that we cannot return move it. Not move it. Then we create a query.
What? What do you mean?
Let's make Apollo server will throw this error.
Oh yeah, but I want to define like a nice error. That's the thing. So if you can also do if not movie, just return a new error that has like there is no movie that matches your thing. That's it. But Apollo server automatically creates a new an error. So this is how you the resolvers are usually just functions in an array. So you have an entire array and you want to resolve something from that array. So you can do the same thing for like if you pass in the title. So if you, I'm going to come here and also add, so ID is not mandatory anymore, and I can also pass a title. And this will be a string. But you can do this one of two ways. So if there's an ID, if params.id, you return this. So you return movie, something, something. And if params.title, I'm not saying this is perfect code, OK? At params.title, you can do another type of stuff. So you can return movies that includes. Is it includes? Yes, it includes. OK. So return movies that includes the params that. Is it like this? Wait, let me just go to the documentation. That's better. That's always better. Oh, never mind. Movies that filter. And you get a movie, and in here you say movie that is it includes? Nope, it's contains. Fuck you. Contains the params.title. And I close this, and there we go. So if I come here and reload the page, I'm like, oh my god, this totally went insane. And instead of passing, I pass it a title that is something. Did it stop again? No. OK, cool. Movie that contains is not a function. It includes. Cool. Are you done? Yeah. Oh my god, what is the thing? String includes.
You can always use
No. Yeah, string the prototype. Oh, no, wait. Sarah's just dumb because it's movie.title. Oh my God, my computer's so slow for being recording. Jesus Christ. Okay, so if you do this, I am gonna punch you in the face.
You should set up for movie query that it cannot be movable. Could you move at top, please?
What?
Please move index.js file at top, align to the API, please, something like that. Yes, here it is. When you make query movie, please add that you should remove. Yes, that will be enough. It's what I asked you the first time.
No, this is just returning null, that's the thing. Movie.title that includes params.title. Movies that fucking, because it's not filter, it's fine. Great. Okay, yeah. So if I just pass like an S here, no, Sharknado, does it have an L? It's anything that includes this. I think I seriously got two movies that don't have any of the same letters. Oh, no, there's an O. Okay, let me go back. So if I put O, any movie title that includes the letter O will actually be returned. It doesn't. It doesn't include the letter O. You get my point. So the only thing that you need to do is actually check for every single thing that comes from the parameters. You can do this in any way that you want. This is just array filters, array finds, maps, and everything. If you want to map all over things and just add a new thing to it, you can also do that, or add a new parameter. You can. It does need to be in the type definition. So everything that you return needs to be in the type definitions. Does anyone have any questions about this in general? This part.
Can you just pause for a minute?
Pause what?
The screen.
Oh, yeah.
Sara, maybe you can copy-paste it to disk and send to Telegram. It can be used by people.
But we have the same with the repo. But
Is it the same?
with books mostly.
Yeah, it's mostly the same.
Yeah. It's the first folder.
Yeah, there is a start and a solution to all the exercises. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to put another thing here called rating, for example. And this will be an integer as well, for example. But this is not actually returned in here. So what you can do is that you have the type of, no, not a query. So after the query, you have a type of movie, And in here, you can define something like the rating, for example. And this will get the parent, and I'm just going to console.log the parent. Need to return it. Wait, there we go. And I'm going to console.log the parent. So .log parent, and I'm going to return 0. Okay, so if I come back here and reload the page and make sure that there are no bugs, there are no bugs. Yeah. Do the same thing. Oh, I'm not returning the rating. Okay, this will return 0, and this will return the parent, which is the actual movie that we asked for. So when you are here, this rating is basically something that is not resolved in any of our other resolvers. It's something that we added by the end of it. So this rating is not resolved here, so you can resolve it here. And what this means is that it will get the parent query. So for example, if you want to get this at like, imagine that this has an EMDB ID, for example. and you want to get this from the EMDB API, which doesn't exist, but there are APIs that do the same thing. What you can do is go to parent.emdb ID, and instead of doing it in here with the rest of all of the things, you can just go get a fetch with this parameter and return it in here. So this is the result of the parent query of movie, for example, or the parent query of movies. If I do the same thing but for movies, let me just delete all of this and do movies. I do this, and I forgot to return things. That was dumb. ID, get out. ID and rating. There we go. And if I come here, this, as you can see, will return both of the results that were returned by the parent query. So this is a thing that you will mostly not use, but you may need it. And so this returns the results of the parent query. That's why in most things it's defined like this. And if it's not, it's usually defined as parent or parent query or parent result, something like that. So you can use it to fetch things from another API, for example. Or you can use it to just statically return something instead of, because I can also do this in another way, which is, let me remove all of this, and this, and this. OK, cool. And in here, I can say const movie equals this, and I'm going to return movie.map. And in each movie, I have to like return the whole thing. So what? It's for the other one. Oh yeah, no. This is yeah, you're right. I wanted to do this, not that. Wait. So you return all of the movie, and then you come here and you also return, so rating equals 0, for example. And this will do the same thing. If I just go back and do this, this will do exactly the same thing. There we go. Yeah, so it's the same thing as doing something like this, but it's more clean and it's in another place, basically. Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah, sure. Wait, let me just, yeah, so this is the movie. Oh, ignore the rating. Sorry, that was for the explanation. Of what?
A little bit about type query. Why we need to put these braces, these types, because we already have it in the top of type.
Wait, where's my mouse? What do you mean? You mean this?
Yeah. Next slide.
You mean this?
Yeah. Why not movie and movies? That's all. Without this, without braces.
Oh, this is because, so you can't resolve a movie without you passing any parameters to it.
So it's not like types, it's like...
No, it's an input. It's basically an input.
And it's received in our result.
Yeah, it's these parameters. There is also a type called input, so I can say input movie search, for example, and say that this has an ID of ID, like this, and this is required, and in here, instead of passing this, I can pass this. So it's just an input, basically. It's the, yeah. No. Inputs cannot be used as types, and types cannot be used as inputs. So this is like what you get. This is what you get in this function. That's it. What you need to resolve your thing. So if you need a title, do a title. If you need an ID, do an ID.
And we need to define explicitly all parameters.
Yeah.
We cannot make it dynamically and pass any parameter.
No, you need to define the parameters. No, there's no spread. So the thing about GraphQL is that it's very strongly typed, which makes you know what you're going to receive, but may make it slightly boring if you have a huge REST API that you need to transpile into a GraphQL API. There's no spread. Exactly, that's the idea of the REST API. So you should know where you passed, and you should know where you need to resolve your stuff. Does anyone have any other questions, or?
What do you think, Sarah? If I want to receive call object, and I don't want to say every field from the object.
If you don't want to say every field from the object, what do you mean by that?
For example, there are 10
user with a lot of fields.
Yeah.
You have to define every single field in the type definitions. There is no way around that.
So
And you have to know which field that represents in type of a, what type, is it an ID, is it a string, is it an integer, basically. You need to know what that returns, and you need to define them all, even if they're nullable.
If we work with Apollo client, can we make request from schema, and after that use from schema definition all fields? It's all like a little hack here, but
Use the what? Get all fields from the schema definition?
yes.
What do you mean by that? You say that in here you want to get a way of just returning all fields instead of typing the name of the field?
Yes.
No. There is a way in the front end which is called fragment. So for example, if you return the same thing 30 times, you can just define a fragment, which is a variable basically. But you will need to define them at least once. But then you can copy it from place to place, which is nice. But you need to define it at least once. Oh, and also, this is all automatically documented, by the way. Yeah, so if there's a schema, and then there's this movie, for example, which, let me reload the page because it still gets a title. So movie, which says type details, it returns a movie, an ID, a string, and a year, and as an argument of ID. And there's the movies, it returns an ID, which, let me just go over one thing that is actually really cool, which is to document this. All you need to do is pass in this. So a movie. And so type ID, you can pass something like the ID of the movie. And this will be automatically added here to the documentation, which is just a schema. So if I go to movie, this returns a type of movie that has an ID and has a type and has a year. The argument is an movie, yeah. So this returns always something like this. And you can also, these are, yeah. Well, let me go on the internet again. Document type defs. That is comments. That's not what the fuck, man. This is an issue. No, GraphQL tag. Thank you. Oh my god, there is no thing that says this. Great. Okay, I'll look it up while you guys are doing the exercise. But there is a... Is it this? What the fuck did I do now? Oh, it's just one bonanzas for some reason. Cool. GraphQL playground. Nope. Okay, there's a way to put the definition like right here, explaining what it does, and I'll look it up while you guys are doing the exercise. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna close this and just gonna git checkout. Okay, so there's a 1.2, which is server exercise, and if you open that up, this will have pretty much the same thing that I had in mind. which the only difference is that it also has a type frameworks, and this is not up to date at all. But there is also a README that says, in this exercise, you create a Apollo client to create an API for the list of frameworks in a file. So the idea is that you can use the server start solution, but the server start solution doesn't have the one to return by ID. So the thing that I wanted you to do here is return all the frameworks, so create a type definition for each framework, assign an ID to each one of them, so it can be just 1 and 2, and try to return a framework by that ID. Is that all cool? All the package.json things are already set up, so if you run yarn dev, it actually reloads the server every time you make a change. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's the only things that we have. Yeah, sure. OK, so you have these frameworks, right? So what I want you to do is, first of all, create a type definition for each of the frameworks. So wait, let me just stop this. I'll just restart it. So return all of the frameworks when someone searches for frameworks. And then, like as a bonus thing, it'd be cool if you just created an ID, which can be just 1 and 2, for example, and then search for ID. So do that fine thing that I did, basically. You can obviously come to the server start solution, the first one, and get things from here. And that is completely fine. And that's it. So that's what I wanted you to do. To start the server, you can run yarn dev. That has nodemon, and we'll restart the server. If it shows you an error on the GraphQL playground, like if I type this, it will tell me that this is not a thing. Please reload the page as the type definitions do not get updated. It does work, but it doesn't get updated, so it's very confusing. So if you change a type definition or add one, please reload the page. OK? Anyone have any other questions about the exercise?